You're very welcome to this afternoon's Meet the Author session. For anyone who doesn't know me, who maybe hasn't joined previous sessions, my name is Belinda O'Neill and I'm an author myself and a facilitator, and I'm based in Northern Ireland. And I'm a member of the Institute of Leadership, and I will be your host for today's session. And you're all extremely welcome from all parts of the world. It's brilliant to see you all. For anyone, again, who doesn't know what the Meet the Author series is all about, it's really around bringing you esteemed authors from around the world to discuss their latest publication, to challenge outdated leadership practices, and to offer a fresh take on the issues that face today's leaders. This is held on Zoom, so just by way of housekeeping, we want to hear your interaction and your questions. Please use our chat box to do that. We will try and get to as many questions as we can during this afternoon's session. And just to let you know as well that this session is being recorded. We would love for you to keep your camera on. You won't appear on the actual recording, but we would love to see your face, and indeed we enjoy your interaction as we move through this session. So let me introduce you to today's guest, and it is Stuart Andrews. And Stuart is dialing in from Sydney, so the other end of the globe, and you're very welcome to this session, Stuart. And Stuart has 20 years experience in leading large-scale transformations, a highly regarded executive leadership coach, and a LinkedIn leadership top voice. He is a trusted advisor to management teams and executive boards, and is renowned for his ability to navigate the complexities of leadership challenges, and we all know there are many. His diversity and experience in leadership have earned him a place in the Forbes Coaches Council. Just amazing. His book, The Leadership Shift, and that is the cover of it, is a must-read for anyone in a business leadership position, especially those tasked with driving organisational change. And I'm so looking forward to hearing more about Stuart and his book. Stuart, you are very welcome to this afternoon's Meet the Author session.
Thanks for having me, Belinda. Really, it's a great pleasure to be here.
You're very welcome. Okay, so let's start, because we've lots and lots of questions, and we look forward to the interaction from today's audience as well. So perhaps just to begin, Stuart, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to write your book, The Leadership Shift.
Sure. Look, I've said this many times before. I started my journey as a computer scientist, writing code, and it didn't take me long to discover that I didn't really enjoy that as much as I did talking and having relationships with people. And so through that process, I moved on to business analysis, project management, and then took on a lot larger roles in sort of program director roles and transformation roles, leading huge amounts of transformation for large organizations. And it's in that process that I realized the world of coaching. And, I started off doing sponsorship coaching and helping newly sponsors who've, got recent budgets of, $20 million, and they've come from certain areas of the business and they don't really know what their role is in actually how to lead and bring that sort of sponsorship coalition in large enterprises, and how do you get that successful transformation over the line. And it's through that journey that I discovered the need for leadership coaching more broadly, more holistically. Found that the root causes of challenges are constantly being missed altogether, diluted in the different political agendas that exist in organizations and all the silos and the bureaucracy, etc. And so, I set out on a mission to really look at how do we create better leaders? How do we bring to the table leaders that inspire employees and have employees that wake up every morning and really excited, passionate about going to work? And I thought, what better way to sort of bring all that collective experience into a book?
Brilliant. And it really does. It's an absolutely impactful and powerful book. So I suppose maybe just to talk a little bit about the content. So in the first two chapters, Stuart, you explore the challenges faced by leaders today and how data can improve the customer experience and journey. You state leaders are required to respond thoughtfully, decide prudently, and adapt readily. especially when it comes to challenges. So what exactly do you mean by that?
A lot. I think as I coach organizations today, a lot of the time there's this hunch, there's a feeling of what we should do, or maybe the information that's been, sent up the chain is not actually correct, not telling the full picture. As I said earlier, it's not maybe reflecting the true root cause analysis. And so what I encourage organizations to do is, basic principles like the 5 whys, dig deeper until you get to the crux of the problem. And so, I try to, summarize that in a statement. And ultimately, when you're trying to make these decisions, let the data speak so that that data drives your judgment, but also your decision making.
Okay. And I suppose in terms of automation and technology, and again, linked back to the customer experience, you do explain again and discuss it in great detail that it's not the whole solution, that, automation and technology isn't the full solution in terms of, the customer experience. Maybe could you elaborate and tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when we're faced with cost pressures, for example, we tend to look at, okay, well, how do I bring costs down? And automation and the latest gadgets or the latest piece of technology, like now AI is out. And so we look at how do we leverage that to try and bring costs down or cost out in organizations. And again, we start to lose sight of the end customer, right? And in that process, we tend to sort of, even if we say we're all about the customer or we're all about the employees, eventually what's happening is that we're diluting that down to just focus on, the end technology and how do we adopt it, how do we embrace it in the organization, but actually neglecting the customer experience. And a good example of that is when chat took off by itself, right? So we had a lot of people who were contacting call centers, right? And organizations wanted to say, well, hang on a second, you can only take a phone call, per person, right, at any given point in time. So, what if we could bring chat into the organization and all of a sudden the customer service rep can now handle, 4 or 5 chats at any one given point in time. So we're reducing cost, but we're forgetting about the actual end customer experience. And I'm sure many of us have felt that, whether you're talking to a travel line, airline industry or banking industry, and you're feeling the delays in the actual customer experience. Yes, of course, there are many simple use cases that you can achieve by having a chat function. But when you get to the more complex situations, you have to be thinking about, okay, well, is this really the best customer experience? And so, I try to basically bring thought-provoking questions for leaders as they read through this to navigate and think about, well, what are their practices at the moment and what could they do better?
Excellent. And you're absolutely right. It's having that, different channels for the customer to be able to choose, not solely having just the automated, because there are sort of complex issues that people have and they will need to speak to someone. So it's about having that omni-channel, really, isn't it? Fantastic. Thank you, Stuart. Just to pause for 1 second, just again to the audience, we would love your questions. So please use the chat box and get your questions in, and we will get to them in due course. So we appreciate every question. And again, just one final thing, Karen is here from the Institute. I forgot to mention her at the beginning. So she's here if we have any difficulty, if anybody needs any support. So you're welcome to the call as well, Karen. All right, so as we move through the book, you refer to the term trusted advisor and how to source the right one within your organization. Again, for the audience, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about what you mean by a trusted advisor, Stuart, please?
Yeah, look, this is a big topic in itself. I think when we're looking at trusted advisors, we're looking at those individuals both within the organization, but also outside of the organization that can have a holistic view on what's actually happening. And so many a time we will find that we will go to someone that we think they're quite good, right? They've got some amazing talents in a specific area, but then we start to rely on them for more, I should say, across the enterprise advice. But they actually don't have much experience in that area. But yet, because we've had relationships with them and things have been going great, we think of them as a trusted advisor. And so what I've tried to do here is just to try and unpack that a little bit by outlining what are the things to look for when you're actually going through and thinking about having a trusted advisor, both internally and externally to the organization.
Excellent. And there's some great nuggets of wisdom and advice in there. Great to see our first question coming through. Laura, thank you for your question. Laura says, Stuart, she's curious what you think about the balance of power between employees and employers. Did more autonomy for employees during COVID force a big change, or did it propel a change already in the making? Really good question. Thank you, Laura.
Look, I think it's a good one. I think it already propelled a change that was already in the making. I've talked to Fortune 500 companies that have had this remote working for years, way ahead of the curve, way before COVID even was thought of, in terms of what happened. And they were working fine. There's been no issues, no backlash of trying to get people into the office 3 days a week now, and all these kinds of rules that are coming up. And they've been innovative. They've been able to, continuously improve their product development, et cetera, et cetera. And I think employees are, at the core of this. They're going, well, hang on a second. Yes, we do need face-to-face interaction, and I'm not one for saying, no, we get rid of that. I've been always saying it's hybrid. It's all about hybrid. It's about fit for purpose. Not only that, some people will try and challenge, okay, we just got a hybrid workplace. Like I said, well, sure, but it's about, is it fit for purpose? Okay, some teams within your organizations can actually work a lot more effectively if you give them more remote work, and some others actually need more and more face time. So it really depends, and you can't just say one rule, one size fits all. So definitely, I think just COVID exacerbated the situation, and in many cases, organisations were forced. They had to make do with all the lockdowns. In our country here in Australia, we were locked down to at some stage. We couldn't leave our house for 5 kilometre radius. So you were absolutely forced to to have to make do with the remote workforce.
Yeah, and I suppose that time has, as Laura's rightly saying, maybe then advanced the move towards that flexibility and that different locations and the hybrid approach. But as you say, one size doesn't fit all, and it's trying then to measure exactly what is appropriate for any relevant organisation. Laura, I hope that answers your question. Thank you for it. You refer to a concept, decision fatigue, Stuart. And that many leaders obviously face this on an ongoing basis. So how best can it be surmounted?
I think every day we wake up, all of us, right, let alone leaders, right, who are dealing with people's lives ultimately in terms of their livelihood. The decision fatigue comes in as simple as what to do at any given point in time, right? So no matter the notifications that we're getting on our mobile device to whatever we've got planned in our calendars, etc. And I think for leaders who are trying to navigate complex changes, right, it's very easy to get caught up with the latest trend, and there's always a new tool. And with the proliferation of AI today, I can't remember the statistic, but we're talking about thousands of tools that are being launched into the market every single day. So there's no way you're going to be able to, stay ahead of the curve with the latest tool or the latest, digital type of gadget. So I think it's about how do you sit back and think carefully and strategically about what your strategic objectives are and how do they align to your mission and vision. And then put a plan in place, a robust plan. But it doesn't mean that the plan is fixed. It's all about how do you create a plan, but is also adaptable and agile and empowers your employees. And I think decision fatigue for me comes from them trying to hold a lot of control themselves. So it's more about how do you push the information, the decision making to those who are closest to the information flow, right? And so for me, what I've witnessed in my personal experience, your customer service agents, your frontline staff, they're the closest people to the root causes of what's going on. And so you want to give them more and more empowerment, more and more autonomy to actually execute, and therefore relieving you from so much decision fatigue.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that. Great advice. In terms of organizational optimization, you state executive leaders need to align to the company values, be dedicated to optimizing the customer experience, all whilst managing the risks and committing to a digitised future. Can you give us some advice on how best this can all collectively be achieved?
I'd like to probably leverage the earlier point where, the use case of, adopting digital technology like chat and now AI, right? And how do you optimize operations with the use of AI in this scenario? I think it's got to be carefully considered, and I think there's again fit for purpose solution everywhere you look, right? You can look at those mundane tasks that your employees are talking to you about day in, day out. I talk a lot about work friction. So listen to your employees about where there are friction points in the organization. It could be people, process, technology, and look to where you can plug in AI to solve those friction points that are quite easily solved. Quick wins, I should say, and pain points that are resolved very quickly. And then look to how do you leverage and cross-skill, upskill your employees to handle a bit more complexity, because with technology, there's always more complexity. And so we're getting more and more complex ecosystems, environments. And that's where leaders and, the execs need to be spending their time. And how do you, unpack this complexity and try and simplify it as much as possible? So it's a holistic view in terms of looking at how do you consistently optimize while you're investing in digital technologies.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I suppose keeping on that theme of future of work, you look at and you explore in detail the omni-channel customer experience, the stakeholder management and engagement, and the importance of a really robust governance infrastructure to support your decision making. So I suppose maybe in brief detail, what strategies do you recommend to be successful in that leadership role in terms of the future of work agenda? And again, audience, if you can please use the chat box for any additional questions you may have for Stuart.
Well, I think as we look at the future of work, we look at where we're heading, especially with again the proliferation of technology. We have to consider what's the appropriate governance, and you could see that organizations that are going to put it on the lens of cost cutting or what have you will end up paying a huge price in years to come, where it comes down to cybersecurity, for example. And so it's about how do you make sure that while you are investing in technology to make your workforce ready for the future, how do you also make sure that you're investing in the right types of training, both, for the lack of better terminology, hard and soft? And I think there has to be more weighting on soft skills, if, again, not the best word, but, how do we make sure that our leaders and managers are constantly upskilled and trained to lead these people? And that's a big sort of area of weakness at the moment that I see everywhere. Just this morning, I was talking to an organization, and they've got 300 staff members who have never ever heard of anything called leadership training, but yet they all have direct reports. So for me, the future of work is about, okay, it's very quick and easy to upskill someone on, say, a technology tool, or something new like that. But when it comes to how to empower them and how to teach them what true leadership looks like, we've got to start investing and making that a key priority in the future of work.
Okay. And I suppose just in addition to what you're talking about there, in terms of, that leadership development, how best can organizations begin to, introduce that into their organizations, Stuart?
Yeah, it's a great question, because, whilst what I see generally happen is that organizations will tend to look to theoretical concepts, okay, which are great. And what I mean by that is we'll look at how do we give them more and more theory, but people are really struggling right now with time, right? So no one's going to sit there looking at, a 1 hour YouTube video on a particular leadership topic. Take, for example, conflict resolution, or take, feedback, or what have you. So I think it's about in the moment, right? I think you have to try and move towards in the moment where, leaders are paired up with whether they're coaches or mentees or advisors or wherever it may be. But in the moment, there's got to be some ability to reach out and get support. And I think that could be very helpful for organizations to consider.
Yeah, brilliant. That peer-to-peer support is so important in the workplace, isn't it? Okay, we have a question just in from Graham. Hi, Graham. Since publishing The Leadership Shift, have you had any peers challenge any chapters or any of your content? And if so, what has been the biggest challenge? So we'll take that part first. There is a second part to this.
I would have liked to say yes to this, but I actually haven't. I'd say the challenge has been more so on LinkedIn with maybe some of the posts that I've had in the past, but nothing to do with the book specifically, no.
Okay,
and I can't recall a specific example at this point in time. I wouldn't even call it a challenge. It would be more of an alignment on perspectives.
Okay. Well, in second part of Graham's question then, do you think that those comments or feedback were valid or reflect a broader shift to new leadership?
Maybe if we can get clarity on the broader shift to new leadership, like what does that actually mean, Graham?
Yeah, well, we'll wait then, and Graham, if you can maybe expand on what actually you mean by the term new leadership, and we'll pick that up in a second. Okay, so in terms of your book, as you move into the sort of final sections of your book, you focus on the importance of building a healthy organizational culture centered on employee engagement. You talk about how to recognize the signs of a healthy and an unhealthy culture, and how celebration, connectedness, collaboration, contribution, and creativity basically help to align workers and work. I personally love this section, Stuart. So maybe just for the audience, if you can share a brief synopsis of your advice in this area, that would be great.
Yeah, look, I think it's all about culture. I really do. From all my years' experience, leading teams and managing, I think it's the culture in the organization that really drives, and it's almost like a high-performing culture, high-performing team is what you get, right? And a good example of that, right? And maybe the synopsis here would be better shared with an articulation of what I mean. So some of you it may resonate with you, cultural values that you might see in the workplace, right? It might say, hey, we're going to be bold, we're going to be, filled with integrity, and, we're going to be clear in our communication, whatever it may be. But it's those organizations that actually take those values and actually implement them in the moment within what's happening or a day in the life of the organization. What I mean by that is that, if I'm seeing, one of the things that we lived by in one of my previous experiences was, respect. So if I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm seeing that someone is starting to get quite aggressive in their communication, then there's a duty on every single member in that meeting to say, hey, hang on a second, that's out of line, right? That's where you need to step out, cool off, blow off some steam, whatever it may be, come back in and rephrase or reword or reset the scene in terms of how you communicate. And so to me, that would say that's a very healthy culture if that scenario took place in every organization, right? Because we just said we're going to embody respect, and respect has to be in every, it doesn't mean that we're not going to stuff up along the way, but it just means that we've got to be able to hold each other accountable to those cultural values. And so that drives a type of behavior and what's accepted and what's not accepted. And so, the summary of this whole section is all about, if you have a healthy culture, then ultimately your employees will be engaged. They'll be happy to come up to work. It doesn't matter what the challenge is, it doesn't matter how difficult the project is, they're still happy to work in that difficult and challenging environment because it's challenging from a work perspective, but not from a personality type of perspective.
Excellent. And sometimes in that room, it is easier said than done to speak up, especially if you see poor behaviour. I think it's sometimes easier to speak up when we see great behaviour, sometimes just not that easy to speak up whenever it's negative behaviour. But you're absolutely right. It's all around the engagement and the culture and having that healthy culture and bought into the values. We have some questions coming in, Stuart. So we'll take the first one. That's from Navdeep. Hi, thank you for your question. How do you see leaders should maintain the balance given the transformation taking place in the new normal, but the business operations hasn't slowed down or allows time for that shift. Any thoughts on that, Stuart?
Given the transformation taking place in the new norm, but the business operation hasn't slowed down. What else is that shit? So is this more around we need to transform, but we also got to continue doing what we're doing? I think is that your take on it as well?
I think yes, he's saying yes. So it's really busy.
Yeah.
The operational side is extremely busy, but there's a lot of transformation happening alongside that.
Yeah, look, this is quite a difficult question, but it has a lot of, I've got a lot of insight into an organization who went and undertook a 5-year transformational journey on a $350 million project, right? It was quite detrimental for the organization because it's exactly this question. They're trying to transform their whole billing, customer care systems, et cetera, huge amounts of systems that are being replaced, and at the same time, they're battling the product development lifecycle. Hey, we need to get new products out into market. And so the decision that they took for quite some time was we'll build on 2 platforms, okay? We'll build on our legacy and we'll build on the future platform as well. But it started to become too cumbersome and it was burning so much money, right? It was just not going to continue like this. And so I think there has to be a point in time where the organization comes together to say, listen, what's actually better for us is to pause. Yes, we're going to take a hit. Shareholders they need to realize that we are going to take a hit. And I think from memory, I think it was Netflix from memory that might have done this. Don't quote me on the story, but there is a case study that's been written recently on actually an enterprise organization doing this quite successfully.
Excellent. Hopefully that answers your question, Navdeep. I'm conscious of time because we like to stick to our time. We do have more questions coming in. If we're not going to really get to them in this session, but we will respond to them via email. So please, all questions will be answered even off the call, and we will get them back to you via email. Stuart, it's brilliant to see all the questions. I haven't even got through all my questions. The time has absolutely flown by, as it always does. We could talk for hours, I think, at this stage. But I suppose in summary for all of the listeners, and I know that Karen has put a little note into the chat box, Stuart has very kindly given us lots of resources, which are in the resources section of the Zoom meeting here. But he's also offering the first 100 subscribers to his new online community a free ebook PDF copy of his book. So the link to register and to subscribe is in the resources section, but for information, if you want to jot it down, it is www.stuartandrews.me/communities, but it is in the resources box as well. Thank you so much, Stuart, for your amazing insights. Your book is phenomenal. I think the word that I used to describe it was remarkable, to be fair. And you add so much personal insights as well through your Here's My Story, which runs throughout the book. It's a must-buy for all leaders. I can fully recommend it, and it is available for you all to purchase now. Thank you so much to everyone who has registered and joined in the interaction in today's session. Please keep up to date with all of the upcoming events via the website Leadership Global. There's some amazing events happening, and I will be back with you next month, October, for our next Meet the Author session. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Belinda. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.